there's no doubt in my mind that he was technically considered a fake natural, but as we know, there's always more to the story than what you see at face value. What is going on YouTube? I'm Sean, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about Remington James. And if you don't know who Remington James is, he's basically a fitness YouTuber who's known for his content built around the anabolic diet. To add some context here, whenever I first got into the fitness thing a few years ago, I used to watch his videos all the time because he used to make these very cookie cutter type meal prepping videos, and it was basically just like chicken, broccoli, and rice. But as his channel began to evolve, you began to see better content that was kind of revolved around the anabolic diet, kind of more flexible dieting, and things like that. And as I continued to follow him, I was always under the impression that he seemed like a pretty good dude, really upbeat personality, and had pretty positive vibes throughout most of his channel. Obviously, that's changed as his channel has evolved and he's gotten a little bit bigger of an audience. Now, that's not to say that he's like a bad guy or anything, but he's definitely become more outspoken as time has gone on. But for the most part, he definitely still seems like a positive influence in this industry. But there's one thing that always struck me as odd, and that was the fact that he kind of came out and discussed his anabolic use a couple of years into his YouTube journey. And prior to that, he was kind of, I don't want to say claiming natural, but definitely wasn't open about what it was he was taking.
I have a serious question for you, all right? I think it's time, after a long debate, I'm going to turn in my NATTY card, and I heard you got what I need.
Rim, are you sure? That's your claim to fame, man.
I really don't have any other choice. All these other YouTubers are running around jacked, swole.
You can see from this clip here that he's definitely implying that he was a natural, and I'll put the video somewhere like down here on the screen so you can go ahead and see that the name of the video, I believe, was Turning In My NATTY Card. And he basically implies that he's switching over to creatine, and not really switching over to creatine, but that he was taking it, and it was kind of like a jokey-ish skit. It wasn't really taken too serious. And up to this point in his channel, which had been around for a couple of years at this time, there was no real evidence of him taking steroids outside of the fact that, you know, his physique was beginning to change. Over time, you definitely saw him getting smaller, and he was kind of, you know, doing the whole entire keto diet thing along with the carnivore diet thing, and really showing his audience different routes and options when it comes to what diets you can pursue whenever you're starting out your fitness career. However, Remington James eventually came clean and was kind of getting, you know, bugged about this whole entire you know, him losing size and how he looked a little bit different than whenever he initially started. I'll go ahead and post a picture of him at this time versus, you know, whenever he initially got started on the channel, which will be over here somewhere. And you can see that he's definitely got a lot more muscle mass and he's more vascular and things like that. So it's pretty clear that he was losing a significant amount of size over a very short period of time. I'm assuming this was over, you know, a few months. And the good thing about Remington James in this case was that things weren't as clean cut as they seemed. He ended up posting this video up here that basically described his journey with steroids, and I believe to this day this is the most popular video that he's ever made. And what I always found odd about this whole entire situation wasn't the fact that he was on PEDs. I've been pretty, you know, transparent about the fact that I don't really care if somebody's on PEDs, even though I don't think it's, you know, the best route to pursue if you're really just focused on health. However, there's no doubt in my mind that he was technically considered a fake natural, but as we know, there's always more to the story than what you see at face value. And so I always had to ask the question why I thought he was never really called out for his fake natural status. And I think there's a few reasons that we can kind of dive into here that kind of address why nobody ever called him out for being a quote-unquote fake natty. I think first and foremost we have to address the fact that at this time his following wasn't very big. I don't know any exact numbers, but I know that he was considered a very small YouTube channel, and while he was pursuing different routes in terms of, you know, creating a supplement line and moving down to Austin or California at the time, that, you know, he really wasn't like the David Lade or, you know, the Jesse James West in today's YouTube industry. So I do think that that definitely helped when it came to him not really getting called out for his fake natural status, because at the end of the day, I feel like the people who were getting called out were getting called out because of their enormous following. And for him, it was more or less the fact that because he didn't have a huge following, you would almost be giving him more clout, and that would probably be more counterintuitive in that, you know, situation. But even whenever Remington James did get bigger, he still wasn't called out by the fitness industry, which I always thought was odd because a lot of people like to dig things out of other people's past. And of course, that's how we get to our cancel culture, right? And that kind of created this whole entire platform of people calling out, people like Greg Doucette, and they didn't believe that he was natural prior to, him saying that he was on PEDs, but there's no real telling. And so there was kind of this whole entire thing that built up and then kind of dissolved after he came clean about his PED use. And I always thought it was odd that even though he's become relatively well known in this space, still no one has yet to call him out. And here's why I think that is. Obviously, we know that he didn't have the biggest following, but also whenever he did start to develop a following, he was very open and transparent about his PED use, although it was a little bit later down the road, he did address the elephant in the room. And then, of course, there's the second point, and this is a big one that I kind of want to drive home a little bit, and that's the fact that he does inspire change. He's not just sitting here giving people regular advice. His channel continues to evolve, and the more he, learns about diet and fitness, the more he passes along. And he doesn't claim to be a professional in every single aspect of fitness. He's pretty transparent about that as well. And going off of that point, there's a couple of sub-points that I'd like to make, which is the fact that he's constantly made, different content built around his, personal training career, which honestly in today's day and age is pretty, unheard of. And I'm not saying that there's not a lot of people selling programs, but the difference is there's a lot of people who are influencers that sell these programs that are very cookie cutter, makeshift programs that really anybody can find or get online without having to pay for them, but yet they continue to sell these programs without actually training real clients. And so he's not just, creating content that's built around helping inspire people, but he's also got a little bit of credibility when it comes to that because, like I said, there's a lot of influencers who sell these programs but have never actually trained a real client. And as I mentioned before, he did have a lot of meal prepping videos that helped him kind of get on the map, but at the end of the day, those meal prep videos, in my opinion anyways, were basically like chicken, broccoli, rice, lean ground beef, lean turkey, things like that. They were super boring, but as he evolved, he began to teach people that it wasn't really just about eating these really bland, boring foods to stay lean. You can kind of have a little bit of, both sides of the coin, essentially, right? Where, yeah, you can go out and you can eat with your buddies, but then also have meals that you think are delicious and that taste good and still get your protein goal. And overall, he has been outspoken at times, but like I said before, he maintains a pretty positive image when it comes to his internet presence. And an example of some of those times where he has been outspoken, just to address that and show that I'm not really biased in this situation, I don't really have a dog in the fight, I do want to say that he has, gotten into things with Greg Doucette. I think it was about like peanut butter and him stealing recipes, which was a whole other thing with other influencers involved as well. So there has been some tension, but I think to some extent people see him as a relatable figure, and here's why. When it came to stealing the recipes, he admitted to being wrong and kind of owned up and claimed that, he wasn't really having any type of malicious intent, but instead he ended up, kind of breaking that code that other YouTubers had about stealing content. And so he was pretty transparent and open after having a little bit of a spat between some different influencers in that same, realm of the anabolic diet, flexible fitness, and all of that. And that peanut butter situation that I was talking about before, well, that was a whole different thing. I mean, Remington James is known for having the Anabar, and he also has this thing called Anabutter. And Anabutter is basically like the Anabar version of peanut butter. And Greg Doucette ended up making a video that was kind of a bit of a, I don't want to say hit piece, but kind of knocked all of the points that Remington James made, and it shined a bad light on Remington James' business. And I think a lot of people can relate to that in some way, shape, or form. If you do have a business and someone's knocking your business plan, how would you react? And instead of, staying quiet and kind of letting it pass, he decided to address it. And he addressed it in a pretty, outspoken, vulgar way, calling out the whole entire boxing YouTube fight thing with Greg Doucette, which in my opinion was still wrong, but at the end of the day, I understand why he was frustrated. And I think a lot of viewers do too, and that's probably why someone like him, slides by with some of the controversy that's built around him. And in that case, it's probably true as well when it comes to the PEDs. What I mean by that is whenever he made this video that was talking about his PED use and his, journey with steroids, he was pretty open and pretty transparent, and I think a lot of people could understand the fact that he was kind of doing, something that a lot of influencers at that time really weren't. He wasn't maintaining his natty card or his natty status. Instead, he just opened up and admitted to the fact that he was using PEDs, and that kind of, puts the stamp of him never being a lifelong natural as far as his YouTube career goes. But at the same time, it does kind of shine a light that, look, hats off to the guy, right? He admitted to being in the wrong and decided that he was going to make a change for the better. And at the end of the day, when he was transparent, after that video came out, he did admit to being on cycle when he was on cycle, taking things like TRT. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing or a bad thing necessarily, but at the end of the day, he was honest and he was upfront about what it was he was taking, which kind of breaks that whole entire facade of him looking like he's hiding something, A, and B, he's not really presenting an unrealistic body image because he is coming open and clean about what it was he's taking and what it is he's taking, and there is something to respect when it comes to that as well. So my message here is like my last video with Eugene Sandow, where the point of this whole entire thing isn't necessarily to call him out or try to blackball him from the industry, but instead to kind of remind people that it's important to remember that focusing on whether or not someone's on anabolics can actually hamper your progress. At the end of the day, focusing on whether or not someone's natural or not natural kind of puts you at a disadvantage because you're allowing that to kind of hamper your progress and you're using it as an excuse to stay complacent when you should just be going out there and getting after it. So instead, focus on your own goals, focus on your own aspirations, and be sure to just focus on what it is you're doing. Don't focus on all of these other clowns in the fitness industry that look great but give shitty advice or sell these shitty programs and have never worked with clients. Just focus on what you're trying to do and take that next step forward. Be sure to just wake up in the morning, get after it, and put in the best work that you can possibly put in. Comparing yourself to others is definitely like our first nature, but at the end of the day, don't allow that to define what your limitations are. And I do think that we kind of have to break away from this whole entire cancel culture of, blacklisting people, because if you continue to blacklist all of these people in the fitness industry that have used PEDs and are now coming open, and admitting to taking PEDs, then you're not really giving them the chance to right their wrongs. And in my opinion, that takes away from potentially inspiring other people to get fit and end up in the gym. After all, if we blacklisted Remington James and he admitted to being on PEDs later on in his career when it came to YouTube, then, there would have been a lot of people that didn't benefit from watching his videos and taking that next step forward. And so I think what's important here is that if you're watching this video and you're somebody who also watches fitness content, in my opinion, we need to kind of change the trajectory that we're on, right? We need to have this path moving forward to inspire people to get into the gym and set a positive and realistic, expectation of what you can expect to see whenever you go into the gym. It shouldn't be this negative, combative energy, and it shouldn't be built around these natty or not videos or canceling people because they were at one time or another on PEDs. Instead, we have to kind of bring each other up. That is it for today's video. If you made it this far, first of all, thank you. Second of all, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe down below. Subscription doesn't cost a thing, so be sure to hit that button, and I will see you all in the next video.